Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Debris. A great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Honestly, season finale left me with a lot of questions. I feel like we got like a handful of answers, but just a ton more questions. So let's break it down. Obviously, Maddox calls about, Ansel Ash escaping last episode, and now, obviously, Brian and Finola were, in particular, Finola's worried, because now that just means Influx is going to come after her dad again. It's like, they've already got to worry about Maddox, and now this, and, but Brian is like, no matter what happens, we're going to protect your dad. So, we get to George, and he's looking through the binoculars, and he sees some kind of like some creature or something walking towards him, which I'm like, it seemed like he felt it or was aware of its presence like last episode, but he's kind of running from it, and then like he makes sure that when he's running out, he puts all that aluminum foil on him. I'm like, wait, what? I was like, does that protect him from it? Like, part of me's wondering, I'm going ahead and go and throw this out there. I'm wondering, is it a byproduct of the debris? Like the debris that brought him back? Like, is that basically death catching closer? Is it almost like a It Follows thing, except when this thing catches up to you, you die again? Like, maybe this is like the downside to it. Like, maybe you always have to be on the run. You always have to be on the move. Or maybe that's, I don't know what that thing is. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. But he makes sure not to tell Finola nor Brian about it. It's just like, oh, we gotta go. So they're tracking the debris piece, the one that's supposed to be the map maker that can help them find all the debris around the world. But when they arrive, they find all these different people like gathered there, drawn by the debris. It's like, yeah, it's almost like the scientists in the warehouse last episode, but now it's a little different because, yeah, like it doesn't seem like they're necessarily dying. But what's also interesting is it's kind of like, I forgot what, an emotional convergence. Because at first I was like, what are they all feeling? Because at first when that last lady arrived at the beginning, she started crying and like everyone else was crying. And then this moment they all burst out in laughter and then they're all shouting. And at first I was wondering, are they feeding on like George's emotion, what he's kind of representing on the inside? But it's like, no. Because we ultimately end up finding out each one of these people is a newborn parent. And so basically this thing is feeding off their emotions, like all the fear and just like everything that they're feeling, like the conditions that their mind and body are in because of, being newborn parents. It's feeding off of those emotions, which is interesting. But I did think it was interesting from the beginning. Well, a good chunk into a little ways into the episode, Brian kind of brings up something. He's like, yeah, can I ask you a question? He's like, it's going to sting a little bit, but he's asking Finola about her dad because he's like, just something's not right. It's like your dad doesn't remember certain things, and what he does remember isn't really fully helpful. It's more like he's like kind of saying like, what if your dad's actually remembering what they told him? Because it's also like how can we have? It's kind of hard to have faith in someone who doesn't have all the answers we need. He has enough to kind of lead us in a certain direction, but it's like, Brian's kind of suspicious of like, yeah, just some of this just isn't feeling right. And part of me's wondering like is that just his natural instincts or is there more to that? Like him feeling like something was off. I don't know. But Finola believes in her dad, she always has. It's like, for one, now that he's back in her life of like, right, like what they need to do to like, with the debris to stop influx and everything, she believes in her dad. But it is a thing of like, right, he has been off for a while, ever since we got reintroduced to him, so I'm like, I don't know. And then at the same time, we have like Ansel with that other dude, and then like we meet Otto, which I'm like, wait, what? We've got John Noble in this. That's crazy. It's like, of course you're going to find a way to squeeze John Noble in this. To anyone that's unaware, never saw it, John Noble played one of the main characters in Fringe, which once again I talked about, like the creator of the show, J.H. Wyman, his history with Fringe. So that had to be like that had to be like done on purpose. Of like, yeah, like. But I was like, wow, that's crazy to bring John Noble in like that. But also, like, Ansel went in to check on what he was doing. And at first with the blood on his face, I was like, oh, I thought it was home dude who like replaced his like. It's like, oh, here's a dude that looks like me. Let me cut off his face and reapply it to mine. I thought it was that dude wearing a new face or something. It's like, oh, no. Otto went in there and killed a whole bunch of people, and they're basically scrunched up, like almost like gravity squished them. And it's like, wait, what? We get no answers about what the hell that is. But it does seem like Otto has some powers or something. Because Maddox did explain earlier on that, because I guess it didn't correlate in my head to think that those were pieces of the debris that are in Ansel that let him teleport and everything. So it seems like every member of Influx has some in them. Maybe like some have, like, maybe it's specifically a single piece of debris that's broken up because that other dude, Loeb, I think his name is, can also teleport as well. So it's probably like they've all got the same piece of debris inside of them. Maybe Otto has a different piece of debris. I don't know. I don't really know 100% what to make of that. But obviously, Brian and George and Finola are trying to find a way to separate everyone from the debris, because he talks about it and kind of explains it later on after Brian's kind of sent away. Because the moment he's like, yeah, I kind of want to talk to you alone. Because basically explains that, because at first he has her touching the debris. Essentially, the debris weighs as much as a single building right now, because of the connections and all the emotions it's pulling from all those people. It weighs it down, so they need to sever the connection, but it might have adverse reaction, like adverse effects on the people. And then George proceeds to point out, like, okay, so we don't have much time. She's like, no, we'll find another way, like we always do. I always do. Like, I have trust my instincts. It's like her dad's like, nope, we don't have any time, because I called Influx. I was like, here we go. I should have stuck to my guns. The entire beginning of this, I was like, George works, like, I had a feeling like either George works for Influx or he's the leader of Influx or something like that. But I let it slip by, just like, the more the season progressed, I was like, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I wasn't sure and it's like, nope, it seems like he is the head of this. Because we end up finding out, apparently, him dying wasn't like, oh, I'm sad and I killed myself. It's like, no, I killed myself on purpose because I wanted to be brought back. But Fernando's like, no, they brought you back. It's like, no, he wanted to be, he's like, I needed to be reborn. Because it seems like this debris, like, gives him access to stuff that, because I think someone last episode, I think someone had left a comment last episode saying that they think George tipped him off or something like that. I don't remember, I forgot, like, I took a glimpse at it, but, like, someone had commented something about why they figured that, like, it's like, oh, how did Otto know about, George finding, the piece of debris that they're looking for? But now it seems like Otto kind of has almost like a telepathic ability. It seems like he can read people's minds, so maybe that's where that is. Like, once again, it's like what he's capable of doing. Like, maybe that was some form of telekinesis, what he did to those bodies. I don't know what that whole deal is, but like I said, maybe it's just the pieces of debris that are inside of him, or from a specific piece that allows him to do whatever it is that he's capable of doing. But we see George kind of talking about Influx's, ideology, about the fact of the matter is, you already know that the governments, not just the U.S., but also every other country, is working on weaponizing the debris. And it's like, obviously, we need to put the debris in everyone's hands, because that way they can rise up against the governments. And there's also, like, this particular piece of debris is important because it's going to help raise them to, like, a whole nother level of consciousness. I think it's supposed to be like, we can become something else, something more, something better. Kind of rise humanity up into, I think we're borderlining like some super beings type of thing of like, let kind of help, humanity reach the next level of evolution or something. Kind of similar in that vein, being something more. And I think it's basically saying that this world doesn't deserve the pieces of debris, and it's like they need to be set free. And once again, just sharing Influx's ideology, or maybe it's more so like that's his ideology, and he's passed it on to everyone else. Because I kept being like, what really tipped me off, like, for a while was like, the fact is that Ansel sung that song that's so important to Finola and her sister. That's what made me go like, no, George has got to be part of this, like, why would he know that song? But then I was like, maybe he just heard George, but I justified it later being like, oh, maybe he just heard George singing it and he latched onto it. But I'm like, because obviously we also saw that too, like, that maybe they all have different pieces of debris inside of them. They might not just have like teleporting debris, because he seems like he might have this, because remember Ansel was able to get into Home Dude's head and get the code to get out. So they might all have like different pieces of debris, like broken up different pieces of debris inside of them, allowing them to do different things. So he can teleport, Home Dude can teleport, but it also seems like he might have a borderline like telepathic ability, or at the very least an ability to kind of see through that guy's eyes. So like maybe that's another piece of debris. I don't know, because I guess I would just, because I just was kind of under the assumption like it was all from the same piece, but it's like, no, it could be from multiple pieces. We don't know how many come from one particular debris, how much come from another. Like, there could be like dozens of, those could all be from dozens of different pieces of debris giving him different abilities, or maybe it's just two. I don't know. Or maybe it is all from one, and it just happens to give him allows him to teleport, but also gives him that thing that allowed him to like read that dude's mind, or see through his eyes or whatever to get out. I don't know. Obviously, Finola is not feeling this, because for her it's like, no, this can't be happening. You're my dad. I know you. This isn't you. They've got to be basically controlling you or something. But for him, it's like, no, this is who I am. And obviously, Brian's kind of unaware of all that's going on. Finola, wants to try and warn him, but her dad and Influx stops her. So it's a situation of Otto's going to deactivate, at least sever the connection between them, but, it will kill them in the process if they do it quickly. But George, looking at Finola, like, wanting to try and convince her to be more on his side, is like, no, let's not do it that way. Do it slowly. Yes, their minds will be wiped, but at the very least, they can learn all that all over again. There's no coming back from death for them. So he wanted to try and do that, because obviously it's like, in his mind, it's like, that's the more humane thing to do, and that's what my daughter would want me to do, so I'm going to do it. So they all have pills to make it so that they can't be affected, but obviously Finola's like, well, what about Brian? It's like, well, Brian's sacrifice will, it'll be a necessary thing, and she was forced to take it, and they end up activating and severing the connection between everyone. And we see even Brian gets hit. You're like, damn. So that means his mind's wiped. So they're picking up the debris, but Brian stumbles through, and it's like, it turns out he's fine. And it's like, how? At first I was like, is it the injections? But it's more so specifically what the injections are trying to prevent. Like, we go into it a little bit. It's like, oh, Otto's like, you're the third man, because he's looking at him, I guess trying, like, at that moment he was trying to dive deep into Brian's brain, and it's like, right, there was an incident. Garcia, an agent named Ming, and Brian were involved in, and we've seen like the aftermath of what it did to Garcia. We aren't aware of what happened to Ming, but that's what this is all about. Brian's been taking injections because they don't know if it will manifest and do anything, but it kind of subsided. Like, I don't know whether it's a thing of there's some pieces of debris lodged in his body that, kind of like, oh, this bullet is somewhere, this fragment is in a very sensitive spot where if we remove it, we could cause more damage. So maybe there's a piece of debris inside of him like that. Or maybe it's just like, maybe the incident, whatever, exposed them to the debris' energy for a long period of time. So we see what the aftermath was for Garcia, but maybe Brian was able to be attended to, or maybe the side effects didn't kick in immediately, and now, like, with the injections, they're able to kind of push it out. I don't know. But that might also play a role in why the debris shows him that maybe this isn't just like a recent thing. It might not just be the cloning. Maybe when he got cloned, whatever was already kind of mixed in him because of the incident at that point, maybe that resonated with the debris on some level. I don't know. But all you see is like Otto being like, oh, they did a good job hiding your identity. So it seems like Brian is aware about this whole third man thing of like, right, so he knew exactly what Otto was talking about. It's like, but I've never met that man before. So, like I said, I think it's just Otto reading his mind. Obviously, George is saying like, come along, Finola, you belong with me. And it's like, she's like, no. For him, it's like, you belong with me, I'm your father. But for her, it's like, my father died 6 months ago, you're not my father, So his attempts to kind of sway her to his side. Maybe, I think for him, he was hoping that he'd have more time to do it, but everything kind of got accelerated. faster than he was expecting it. I forgot. I think he specifically said something happened that made him kind of have to accelerate things. So he was hoping he'd have enough time to kind of sway her more so to his side. That's why like Ansel was trying to talk to her at first, trying to get her to understand more, you know. So he knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was hoping that at least this way maybe he can sway her. But it turns out that's not the case. And so once again, Brian's situation, we still don't know what that's like, you know. In this moment, it's like, because he said, like, this is the first time his circumstances have actually activated in some shape or form because it protected him from the memory and mind wipe. Now, maybe that's kind of implying the fact is that maybe he has some, like, he's developing some kind of psychic abilities, kind of like Otto has on some level. I don't know. Like, we don't know the full scale of how it will manifest. But it is a situation to, like, right, we got to get Maddox in on him. It makes you wonder, did Maddox know about George on some level? Or, I don't know. Because it seemed like maybe it's because we're probably going to find out that George was kind of already a bit of an extremist. And maybe Maddox wasn't aware of just how far off the deep end, like, George had kind of gone. Or maybe it's a situation of he did because he saw signs of George being a madman. That it's like, right, maybe the world... Because at first it made it seem like, oh, he knows all about our secrets. Why not fill Brian or Finola in about those details if he knew about it? I don't think he knew. He might have had his suspicions, maybe. I don't know. Because, like, once again, why else would you want George dead? Unless it's just, once again, he knows some of the shady stuff that Orbital was up to, and you wanted to keep him quiet, and then it turns out, oh, like, maybe you wanted to keep him quiet would have benefited because he's not the same person he was. You know, maybe George was always like this, or maybe coming back shifted and changed him, because he even said, like, it ended up having effects, even the effects of the debris that brought him back exceeded his expectations and stuff like that and what it would be capable of. And, you know, for Finola, he's telling Finola that the fact is he's going to set the debris free, and so when they leave, as they're leaving, like, they see that creature again, and it's not just him seeing it, everyone in the car sees it, but it seems like Ansel and Otto are the only ones that don't really, well, at least Otto seems like he doesn't react, but the other dude, Loeb, as well as, George kind of react to it, and then as it turns around, it starts fading away. So I was like, was that some, like, marker of, like, right, he was running out of time or something? Or is that supposed to be like, oh, it's fading away because now it's like, oh, I got, you know, once again, is it kind of like an It Follows thing where it's kind of like, oh, it's slowly trailing after you, and, like, the closer it fully gets to you, the more visible it gets? Or maybe it's kind of on a time frame where it has a limited amount of time to get towards George, and if it misses that opportunity, it has to wait till, like, the next cycle or something. Because it does seem like the debris does work in cycles, because what happened with all those people being emotionally connected, it did seem like that was kind of flowing in cycles, I think, with just how it was kind of feeding off of them, and the emotions it was making. I guess, like, every emotion it was making them display, it would be like, oh, they're laughing, oh, let me get some of that laughter. No. Oh, you're crying, let me get some of that crying. Like, maybe it's trying to invoke that emotion in all of them so it can eat it, and that's why after they've had their respective emotions, they immediately kind of go back to being stoic. Because it's like, right, that emotion was devoured from them, and that, you know, so there's that. Then there's also the situation with, well, really quickly, before I move off the George thing really quickly, Ansel, it was either Ansel or Otto, it might have been Otto that was like, right, of course, that girl was never going to join you no matter the iteration, and I'm like, wait, is that supposed to mean, like, you've seen, like, the different possibilities of, like, you kind of seen, like, how, like, the different timelines of, like, how this could have worked out? Is that what that's supposed to mean? Or is that supposed to mean there's something? Because there's a thing at the end that I'm wondering, is like, I couldn't tell. I was like, is that Finola? Is that supposed to be, like, a different version of Finola, like, that was locked away or something? Or is that just someone else entirely different? Like, do correct me. It looked like it was Finola, but it might not have been. It might have just been some other lady, but it's like, that's why I'm like, could it be like the Finola that he's with isn't necessarily the real Finola? Like I said, it's the biggest thing I'm walking away from, being like, I don't know about any of this. It's so, like, once again, you'd expect to have at least maybe the season finale give you most of the answers and leave you with some. It's like, no, this gave us some and left us with all the questions. It's like, jeez, dude. We even had the Maddox side of things with him getting making that deal with Arena, and she's like looking for certain settings and stuff like that. But then Maddox was like, you know, I'm not going to let you leave with that, right? And he's like, you have one choice. We never got to see the resolution of that, so we do see later on that he has both cases, so he has both pieces of debris. So I guess it's him being like, oh, you know I'm not going to be a traitor to my country, or it's probably like he was using that as a bargaining chip, but he needs both pieces of debris to help Dario. So maybe it's not the altruistic thing of like, oh, I'm not going to betray my country, this was just a means to an end, or maybe it is just a selfish altruistic standpoint of, right, I'm just going to help my son. Like, I don't know what that one path was. It's either probably like, oh, one way out of this could be you die, or you just kind of like come over to our side. Once again, we never found a resolution to that, so we don't know what ended up happening to Arena. But just when he's getting home, I was like scared because Julia was telling like Dario, like, just remember I love you. We saw the pills on her nightstand. I was like, she's gonna kill herself. And the moment he comes back home and she's like, oh my god, I almost did something stupid. I was like, at first I was like, is she actually gonna wake up? And it's like, because her skin didn't look pale. I mean, to be fair, it could have just been like she hadn't been dead long, but her skin was still bright and colorful and not like pale. So I was like, maybe. And it's like, oh, she wakes up. She's like, I almost did something stupid. Part of me's like, you don't think he manipulated that situation so that she wouldn't, or kind of made it so that she wouldn't be able to do it? I don't know. But it's like, oh, come look at this. And Dario is able to say, Mom. Once again, we don't know what the incident was. Maybe it's not the same thing, but maybe it's similar to what happened to Brian, or whatever the case may be. Like, she was feeling guilt because anytime she looks at Dario and his condition, she blames herself. That was a whole conversation between her and Maddox. It's like, it's my fault this happened. Like, blame me. Stop being so forgiveness. Your forgiveness can be suffocating in its own right. But it's like, oh, they're kind of having steps towards having their son back. Maybe, like, the longer he's exposed to the debris, the more it brings him back. I don't know. But obviously they're going to bring Maddox into the fold about like what's going on. Then we have the ending, because they talked about that, because that spear thing, as they call it, a telespear, it's like, yeah, that wasn't meant to happen. It's like, wait, what? It's like, yeah, what happened to it? It disappeared. We have no idea what it is. I'm like, it was made in a pocket dimension. I'm like, wait, what? So you guys obviously, as he was trying to explain to Finola, it's like there's so much about what's going on you don't understand, so much about the debris you don't understand. But then we get to the guy, what's his name, Dakea? I'm butchering it. The dude that was like, I want to say that was at the end of last episode, or was it the episode before last? He was, waiting out in the desert, and then the telespear comes to him and he introduces himself, and then we meet the dude. That actor, I've seen him in multitude of things. Like, the thing that kind of pops in my mind is playing Michael, Klaus, Rebecca, well, at least Rebecca, Elijah, pretty much everyone else's dad except for Klaus's. Like, that's the thing that kind of immediately comes to mind. But it's like, the fact is that, like, right, they found the piece in Virginia, so we got to get started on our own plan. Which, if that was a Finola, maybe that has something to do with trying to get closer to George. The fact is, home dude, like, peels people's faces off. Immediately, now that I was thinking about it earlier, I'm like, is he an alien? Are they both aliens, like, in human disguise? Like, once again, we know that the ship broke apart and landed here on Earth. What about who was piloting it? So are they the only two pilots? Maybe that's who's in that, status, because remember, there's a piece of debris that kind of puts you in a similar stasis. So maybe that's another person from the ship. Once again, that would explain what the whole slicing of the face thing is like. Probably regenerate his face every so often so that you can slice it off if anything happens to yours. Like, I knew something was weird about that. Didn't cross my mind to think alien, but it's like, of course it would be, because once again, there had to be like someone aboard that ship. Would it just be the two, or maybe three of them, or maybe there's more scattered around the Earth trying to make their own moves? I don't know. They're aware of influx and what they're doing, so I wonder, does that make them more on Brian and Finola's side, maybe Orbital side? Which, now that like George has kind of revealed himself, we might have a situation where it's like, right, we bring in Maddox, we bring in Ferris, and it's like, well, we all have to work together because there's a larger threat out there now. We got to stop influx. Also knowing, like, right, you've been working behind my back. It's like, yeah, because we knew you wanted, Brian told me you wanted my dad dead. So there's got to, got a lot of explaining to do, especially with all the stuff he's doing in secret as well. Once again, just so many moving pieces. Like I said, we still have... I don't think I've ever walked away from a finale so confused, knowing nothing. Like I said, most season finales are going to make you go, hey, here's some like, oh, we're filling in a lot of gap. Oh, nope, we filled in probably 10% of the like questions you had, and we added more to the pile. I don't know. At the time of me recording this, it hasn't been confirmed whether or not NBC is renewing Debris for a second season. I really hope it gets a second season because I need to know where the hell all of this is going to take us going forward. I have so many questions. It's going to bother the hell out of me if we don't get answers. I need answers. There's just too many questions, and there's just too much I don't understand about all of this. There's so many threads that I need a season 2, because I think we'll probably get even crazier and even wilder in the season 2. The mysteries, and hopefully not just more mysteries, but hopefully some answers too to a lot of stuff about, you know, Brian's circumstances, what George's, you know, this influx thing, Otto, Maddox, just, you know, once again, like Finola situation of like being kind of torn between, it's like, right, you wanted your dad back. I think maybe it's a good thing she never told her sister that her dad was bad, but it's like, well, you might find out. And it's like, well, you got to warn her too, because like she might get manipulated by your dad coming back. And it's like, wait, you knew this entire time, you didn't tell me. That might be a whole issue next year. Like I said, I hope the show comes back for a second season, because I'd love to see where they take us. More so than anything, I love some damn answers. So let's leave it at that. So like I said, fingers crossed, hoping for a second season. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.